Welcome back, it's me Lou, and I'm here today for another action figure unboxing and review. And I am looking at this, the Marvel Legends Iron Man, Tony Stark AI, Artificial Intelligence. Now this belongs to the recent Shang-Chi movie wave, which is the Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And we have the figures here and the Build-A-Figure. So each figure comes with a specific piece, and you can make Mr. Hyde right there. And previously I reviewed the Civil Warrior figure, which is kind of a variation of the Iron Man armor. Looking at the packaging, it's your standard Marvel Legends flair. You got the black title towards the top. The bottom, it's Iron Man, Tony Stark AI. Now, when I first saw this figure on the shelves, I didn't realize what it was fully. Like, I saw it was Iron Man, but then it threw me off that I couldn't see his head because there's a black background behind him. And then as I got closer, I realized, oh, it's like some sort of, hologram head or something. Kind of like Cortana in Halo, or in Star Wars when they have the hologram characters, or even it almost reminded me of the Star Wars Black Series Jedi Ghost figures. I think there's like an Obi-Wan one where it's kind of casted in the translucent blue, which is the case for this Tony Stark. And when we look at the side, this is a better depiction of what this character's about. It's a hollowed out, or not hollowed out, but I mean it's essentially just the Iron Man armor, and there's no Tony inside of it. But he's like, this is kind of like his proxy, and there's a holographic projection of his head. That's why it's blue. And here's a better look at it. It's the classic, more traditional Iron Man armor. It's not necessarily the high-tech looking one. And there's his hologram head. And here's a brief bio of this specific figure. Tony Stark AI, Artificial Intelligence. After a tragic battle, Tony Stark lives on in digital form as a hologram at the helm of a high-powered robotic suit of armor. I'm not specific. I'm not familiar with the specific storyline this is from. I'm guessing it's from the comic book series, but maybe it's a more recent one, maybe not. Either way, it's a cool idea for a figure. If you haven't picked up a more traditional, classic-looking Iron Man, this is kind of like a second chance of getting it. Although you're not getting a flesh-colored Tony Stark head, but you could just swap it off and throw the Iron Man head on there, and voila, you have a classic Iron Man fig. So let's take this guy out of the box. Alright, here he is in his tray. So we have the extra hands. We have the kind of like open up hands for his repulsor blasts. And speaking of a repulsor blast, in this tray over here, we actually have the blast effects. The Iron Man helmet, the figure itself, and the Build-A-Figure piece from Mr. Hyde. And now that we removed the backing, we can kind of see it a little bit more clearly. So these are all the contents. It's a cool figure. I'm really glad that I have a more traditional Iron Man. I might already have this figure. I don't know. I have so many Iron Man figures in the Marvel Legends. I don't know if this is a new mold or not. I didn't bother pulling out my older ones. Alright, so let's look at the figure first before we look at the accessories. So right off the bat, this looks nice. I like this a lot. The proportions are nice. The armor it depicts is, correct, I think, for this time era. Especially, alright, so since this is based off of the more traditional comic book look, you're getting a much brighter red and yellow. Unlike the MCU figures, those Iron Mans are often, the paint, it's often like a deeper, richer red, and you get, instead of yellow, you get gold. But this one's yellow. Right off the bat, the plastic, it feels, I don't want to say it feels soft, but the torso's nice hard plastic. I mean, I guess it's to be expected. I guess I was moving around the elbow, but the elbow joint in the middle, it's a double jointed elbow, but see, it sounds like the joint part might be of that softer plastic, so it's a little bit, you know, it has some flex and give, which is a good thing. You don't want the joint to actually be a more brittle plastic, because then it's more prone to break. The head sculpt, now the head sculpt, I'm not sure if it's easy to see on the camera since it's translucent blue or transparent blue, but it's a nice crisp sculpt. It's not as soft as I thought it was going to be. And if you run it under the light, it looks pretty cool. His arc reactor, it's a kind of nice light cyan blue. He has the ab crunch, swivel at the waist, which is nice, and it's kind of swivel at the waist. You know, it kind of like clicks into place, and I like that a lot. He kind of has those metal discs above his thighs. He has a thigh swivel. These discs kind of get in the way, so he can't fully kick super high, but that's alright. It's Iron Man. Boot cut, you know, the ankle rocker, and I don't know. I mean, it's all the articulations, what you come to expect from a Marvel Legends figure. This is a very tried and true design. I kind of feel like I've held this figure a dozen times already, so I'm not really sure if this is if what's new or what's reuse. But as I mentioned before, if you don't have a traditional classic-looking Iron Man, a comic book-looking Iron Man, this is a great fill-in. You know, all you need to do is just swap out the head, which we could do right now. So upon examining the head, yeah, it's a much more classic-looking Iron Man. He has the slits for the eyes and a slit on the mouth. Let's see how easy it is or how difficult it is to remove the head. Alright, the head just pops off. And then we can slap this on. There we go. And wow, that's awesome. I'm almost thinking in some ways, like I get this is the artificial intelligence Iron Man, but I think from a marketing and selling point of view, if I was a kid or even a collector and I saw the figure packaged like this with the AI head on the side, I'd be more likely to buy it. I mean, I think most people are going to buy it either way, but I think packaging wise, it would have looked better if it had this head in there. I mean, this head gets the point across of what it's supposed to be, but if you're a kid and you see this head on there, you're going to want it because it's an Iron Man figure, you know. If you see this on there, I mean, you're still getting both heads, but does it, I don't know, maybe I must be wacky, but I think whoever designed the packaging, they should have packaged the Iron Man head instead of this one and had this off to the side. And I think this makes for a much more attractive package, and it's a bigger selling point knowing that you're getting an actual full Iron Man figure. I mean, you can get one anyways, but when this head's popped on, I almost felt kind of like Jip. I'm like, oh, I'm just getting like Iron Man at 90% without a Tony head. But when you have it like this, you're just thinking, oh, I'm just getting a full Iron Man head with this as the bonus accessory. And speaking of Tony Stark heads, I actually have this head here. So this is a Marvel Legends Tony Stark head. I believe I got this maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not sure which wave it was, but there was an Iron Man figure that was based off of more of, I think, the animation. And this is the head that came with it. It's not the realistic Robert Downey Jr. head. This is more of the, you know, animation model. And I like this head a lot. It's sculpted nice. It's kind of stylized. Tony has a nice, not too youthful appearance. You know, this looks like a guy that might be in his, you know, mid-30s. And I'm really curious to see if this will fit on here. Judging by the size of the socket, it should. They almost look the same. Proportionately, if you look, the AI head's a lot bigger, but that's okay. The head, this here head, it's small, but I think once it's put on here, it proportionally look a little bit more heroic. It'll just make his muscles and upper body just look that much bigger. Oh, there we go. It fits. Oh, wow. It's a nice, snug fit. Okay. This I'm liking. I'm liking this a lot. Yeah, so I highly recommend if you have this spare head laying around, slap it on this body, and it works perfectly. The aesthetic works great just because since this is more of a cartoony head, this Iron Man's a lot more cartoony colors. He's a lot more vibrant, and this really feels, you know, like you're getting a comic book Iron Man. You're not getting, you know, a comic book looking armor with a realistic looking head, which is the case of this. This is a much more realistic looking sculpt. But this animated head looks awesome on this Iron Man. And I love my Iron Man to always have at least one hand with his repulsor blast. And these are like how some of the Iron Man hands were in the past. So the fists that come on this, they're actually jointed, so you can actually, you know, move them up and down. Whereas the repulsor blast hand, there's no joint on it. You always see it stuck in this one position. So you kind of got to be able to live with that, but it looks cool. And let's go crazy. Let's give them both repulsors. Wow, that looks great. All right, the funny thing is, all right, so earlier today I shot a drawing video, and I used this Iron Man as the model for my video. Let me, where is it? Yeah, so I really wanted to draw Iron Man this morning, and I'm like, God, I want to put him in this pose. I kind of see it in my head. And then, yeah, I drew this pose. You know, here it is, dated today. And I'm like, I want Iron Man kind of like Tony Stark is in desperation mode. He's maybe got the crap kicked out of him, has his helmet taken off, and he's getting ready to charge up his repulsors. And it's cool because now I can actually reenact that with the action figure. So I'm really stoked on that. It's a very cool, happy coincidence. And it's awesome. So right off the bat, I'm liking this figure a lot more than I thought I would. At first, when I saw it at the store, I'm like, do I really need this? Because I think I have this Iron Man maybe like twice over. But the fact that it came with this hologram head, part of me was thinking, hey, maybe I could take that head and swap it onto one of the Black Series Star Wars figures that are like Jedi Ghosts and say this is a different character. But taking this out of the package, it's simple. It's simple in the most beautiful way. It's not simple in the sense that you feel like you're getting gypped or something. It's so perfect. It's Iron Man as I remember him in the comic books. See, look at that. That's so cool. So yeah, if you have this specific animated head, get it and slap it on this figure, and you instantly have a cool comic book Iron Man. And what's even better is that, you can pretend that, as I said in a previous video, I love doing this, where I love having Iron Man unmasked and just giving him the helmet off to the side. Now in the movies, he has that helmet that collapses around his head and it folds back into his armor, but for me, Iron Man, I like the idea of the helmet just being a separate piece, and he could take it off and set it down on a table. So that's cool. And since we have the hands ready, let's pull out the repulsor blast. Now we've seen these before. These aren't anything new. They're two pieces. You could take them apart, so you can either have it with a kind of like little starburst effect or without it. You could put it in his hand, so it looks like he's, shooting his repulsors. You can take them off, and you can put them on his feet, and so it looks like he's shooting and flying away. So one thing I mentioned before in a previous video Um, you know, if you use these, word of caution, just be mindful if these are going to be plugged in for a long periods of time, because I'm not sure if they're the same materials or if they're the same blast effects that they've been using in the Transformer figures. But those have been prone to like melting over long periods of time because it's made of that softer rubbery plastic. And I don't know if these are the same material, so I don't know the long-term effects of having this like on your action figure. Like if you're big on like displaying your figures on the shelf and like in action poses, and you want Iron Man shooting his blast out, you know, just be wary of keeping this plugged in for a long time, because if it melts, you know, you don't want to ruin your figure. Yeah, this is a beautiful figure. I love this head. I think the last two Iron Man videos I reviewed with action figures, I'd always swap this head on there because it looks cool. But yeah, I think right now this head's going to live on this figure. I'm not sure if it's going to be permanently, but I like my Iron... For some reason, I like my superhero characters better unmasked. Like there was a McFarlane DC multiverse figure of Flashpoint Batman. And that's actually Dr. Thomas Wayne from a previous alternate universe. So in the Flashpoint universe, Bruce Wayne doesn't become Batman. His dad does. If I remember the story correctly, in that universe, Bruce and Martha are killed, but Thomas Wayne, his dad, is spared, and he takes up the mantle as Batman. So the McFarlane line of DC Multiverse figures, they have the Flashpoint Batman, and there's two versions of it. There's the standard one that comes with the cowl on, and then there's a variant where there's no Batman cowl, and you just see Thomas Wayne's head. And they're both really cool figures. Hopefully I'll get around to... I mean, I have a collection of DC McFarlane figs, and eventually I'll start tapping into those for these videos. I've already done a couple with the custom Green Lantern figures. But yeah, this is such a great figure. The poses you can get into it. There's something soft. I mean, so when I do the ab crunch, there's something about it feels soft. It clicks, but maybe it's like the knees. Maybe the joint inside of it's made of a softer plastic, because it doesn't have that satisfying like click of a harder plastic where you feel confident in what you're doing. This is kind of almost like a mushy kind of click, which is kind of being nitpicky, but the reason why I say that is that over time, I'm not sure if Marvel, some Marvel Legends, for some reason, over time, even if you don't play with them and they just sit around, I'm not sure if the plastic just gets softer and expands, but then sometimes some figures are just kind of like loosey-goosey, and they just, not that the joints flop around, but they're not as tight and crisp as like day one. You know, and that's even if you don't use them. Like the other day, I pulled out a Hulkbuster figure that I've never displayed. I've always kept it flat down on its back in a bin. And when I took it out, you know, it's a heavy figure to begin with, but as soon as I took it out, all the legs and arms just fell back. Like it was so loose, the joints. And I'm like, I never really played or messed around with it. So it's kind of disappointing. And with some of these Marvel Legends figures, you know, they've been around. The line's been around for, I think, over 10 years already. But... you know, if you're like me, and I'm not necessarily concerned about keeping my figures pristine, but I always do like to have the joints and stuff not, you know, get too loose over time. Like if you could feel the indents, you know, when you move the legs up and down, I kind of like that. I know some people get kind of wild and they move it so much that it wears down the indents and the kind of gear kind of deals. But yeah, you can get this guy in some really cool poses. Tony Stark wasn't one of my favorite superheroes growing up. I was more of an X-Men guy than like an Avengers fan. You know, like most people, I didn't really get into the Avengers stuff until much later, especially with the movies. I'd read some of the solo comics, like I'd read Cap and Thor occasionally. Iron Man, for some reason, he just didn't really appeal to me. I always thought it was amazing, though, how like after the first movie, Iron Man for a long time kind of became the flagship character in the comic books. Yeah, so this is awesome. And what's a video going to be without comparing it to some other Iron Man figures? Now, I have a bin somewhere in the house with this Iron Man guys, but I don't want to dig it out, so I'm just gonna grab whatever Iron Man related figures I have at my side. So these are the Mech Strike figures. These are the bargain figures, and if you watched some of my previous videos, you know that I gush over these figures. I think they're awesome. Even though they're like $7 or $8, I think what you get out of the figures is a steal. They're nicely sculpted. They're a little bit more durable because they're made for kids to play with. They're not the same scale. They're slightly shorter than the Marvel Legends, so they don't perfectly fit into that 6-inch scale. They're, you know, maybe they're about 5.5, 5 3/4. So this gives you an idea. I mean, these are a little bit more contemporary, modern tech Iron Man. Each one kind of has the one hand open for the repulsor blast. They all have the arc reactor. The more modern looking Iron Man helmets. Iron Man's a character that Hasbro, I think there's always gonna be an Iron Man figure. You know, I think every so many months you're always gonna see an Iron Man figure like put into some wave, whether it's like for Avengers. I mean, in this case, it's for the Shang-Chi movie, so you know, it's a character that sells. You know, kids love them, adults, you know, like adding them to the collection. Here's the Civil Warrior. This is from the same wave. This is also from the Shang-Chi wave. And if you go back a video or two, I reviewed this guy also. This is from, what was it, Marvel Contest of Champions. I think that's the video game, because this falls into the Gamerverse line. But it's an Iron Man figure nonetheless. It's Captain America with his version of, I don't know, some Iron Man suit. And he comes with this, you know, the reactor shield. It's such a, I don't know, I mean, if you're a Marvel fan and you collect action figures, I swear the last, I don't know, 10, I'm not longer than that, maybe like the last, I don't know, 20 to 25 years has just been amazing of all the toy options you have at your disposal. I mean, before Hasbro had the license, you know, Toy Biz, God, they've made so many Marvel characters, and you know, there's Toy Biz alone they have a huge back catalog of Iron Man guys. Everything from the comic books, the cartoons, and then as soon as Hasbro got the license, you know, with the MCU and the comic books and some of the animations, so many different versions of Iron Man. Like if you're into like collecting action figures and you just wanted to collect Iron Man, the character, you could easily build up a giant this library of Iron Man, just strictly Iron Man figures, because there's so many different variations of Iron Man. But rightfully so, Tony Stark's kind of become the poster boy for the MCU the last, I don't know, 11, 12 years. But with the characters passing in Endgame, you know, we'll see where that goes from there. So yeah, this is Marvel Legends Tony Stark AI. I can't stress it enough. If you have this extra head, this animated specific head, slap it on this body. You won't regret it. It looks awesome. I love this figure. I'm contemplating just, you know, keeping him around my desk as a desk toy, just because I like fiddling around with it. So thank you very much for checking out this video. I greatly appreciate it. I know I don't necessarily do the best action figure reviews, but I hope you know, pull away something from this. You know, whether you're a casual collector, a serious collector, or you know, maybe you don't collect toys, but you just like watching the reviews on them, and you get to live vicariously through people like me. I hope you enjoy this content that I create. So enjoy your day or evening, and I will see you soon. Thanks again.